Okay, everybody, welcome to the Wonder Inn. Just to see first of all, put your hand up if you've been here before. Wow. Okay, you've been as well. That is the least people we've ever had. Well, welcome. It's not your everyday usual venue, but it is our home for Manchester Entrepreneur Social, which is why we're here today. It's very different, and we're very grateful to be able to have the space for today. So, for those that are aware or aren't aware, a bit of a recap. My name's Daniel Halenko. Lovely Kristina Batty over there as well. We run Manchester Entrepreneur Social, which is part of a global movement of entrepreneurs across the world. To date, we have 34 cities in total are running these events at the minute across 5-7 continents. It's been running for about 6 months, and it's part of a collective to do with Roger Hamilton, who owns and operates Entrepreneurs Institute. Roger's dream and goal is to build a global movement of people who are interested in business for all forms and walks of life, who want to utilize their business to impact and make a bit of a difference. So in the UK, I think we have 7 cities at the minute, 6 or 7 cities, and that's growing every single month. So our focus, where me and Kristina come from, is there's plenty of networking events, plenty of events that talk about business growth and business strategy. So we try to not fall into that category. We're really looking at how do we utilize business to make a social impact, to make any bit of a difference. And whether you come at that because you want to drive profit, because in today's modern world, consumers are looking towards businesses to say, well, how do you differentiate yourself from somebody else? Or whether you're coming into this because you're more interested in the social element but know very little about the business side of things. It doesn't really matter how and what brings you here. You might also be coming because of a speaker in particular. But what we're really looking is at creating a community within Manchester that can share ideas, that can meet other people in a relaxed environment and enjoy themselves. It's always nice to find new environments besides business boardrooms, because I've certainly spent enough time in them. And I'm going to speak on behalf of Steve here, but I imagine Steve, you spent a fair share in business boardrooms as well. Yeah. Most likely. So we align everything we do with the UN's global goals. 17 initiatives designed to ultimately create a more sustainable, harmonious planet. They've been going for quite a few years now. And each time we look at bringing on a speaker that's linked with one of the goals, and we ask yourselves as well as you're going through, we've run out of handouts this month, unfortunately, to just start to be aware of them, because the more you can look at whatever business you're in, whatever it is you're doing, and find out which ones relate to you more than others. These are some of the ways that you can align with your global goals.
Is that information available on the website?
It is, yeah. Okay. I'll be able, do we have any handouts? We've got a few. We've got a couple there. We didn't have one for each table. And they're really, really interesting to have a look at. It's okay. We'll have it at the end, unless you've got enough. Oh, cool. So for myself, life online is what I'm always really passionate about. I deal with safety and security systems primarily. I don't know about other people in the room, but quite often you'll find that what you're doing is not necessarily what you might be into. So slowly over the years, I've found ways to align those together. And so understanding the different parts of them can help you to get more fulfillment in life, because what Roger teaches and where we come from is finding natural flow. And any of you who have, especially if you've, it's very obvious when you look at sports people, when you look at musicians, flow is that state we get into when time passes and we're in the zone. You could be working on anything from spreadsheets to art forms, to bricklaying, to whatever it is that you're interested in. And the more you can find when you're in flow, the nicer and the more comfortable everything feels. When you're outside of floor, that's when you get highly stressed, pressured, when you're not able to enjoy yourself more. And everyone knows someone who's reached a stage in their life where they have suddenly found themselves unhappy with their situation, their circumstance. So understanding flow, understanding the 17 UN Global Goals allows you to find something which you like. And the more you can be doing what you like, the more you'll reach a gold ripe age and you'll enjoy what you've been doing. So today, you could argue that every single talk that we do references education. I'm sure it's become apparent to all of us at some point in our life that education never really stops, especially in a business world, especially in today's current age and climate where technology moves at such a rapid pace. I feel fortunate that since I've been growing up, I've kind of seen computers come in. I was able to ride that wave a little bit. But even now I look at some things and realize I'm getting old when I see what younger people can do with devices that took me years and years to understand. And I'll leave some of that to Jon himself. So today I would like to welcome in Jon Masters. I'm not going to give him much of an intro here because he's got a plethora of information to share with you all. So without further ado, give a warm round of applause to Jon Masters. That wasn't me running away, that was me grabbing the props. Hello everybody. Just make sure I don't have it operating system. Right. Okay, so thank you very much for having me. I'm very grateful to be here. My name's Jon Masters, and I have two businesses at the moment. Visioneer is a consultancy business, which I have, and Hugo World, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute, is a new venture that I started very, very recently with a co-founder who's currently off in Bali having fun doing his thing. So I get to go around the country at the moment to do these talks, which has been great fun. Really enjoyed it. So I'll start off with a little bit about myself, my favourite subject. So basically, this slide represents my life in two pictures of an arrow. My life so far, right? It can be summed up like that, and I can actually recreate this slide in reality now because I actually have these bits with me. Does anyone remember this? Anyone know what this is? It's ZX81, yeah, 1981. This is a computer, believe it or not a calculator, that was released by a very famous British entrepreneur by the name of Sir Clive Sinclair. Released in 1981, which is what the 81 actually means on here. The ZX they put on because it sounded cool. And this is a computer that basically changed the direction of my life at the age of 9. And it was huge in the UK, absolutely massive in the UK. And of course, the computer that most people then remember was the ZX Spectrum, which was the one that came after this. But this was the one that did it for me. But my story doesn't actually start in the UK. My story starts in the foothills of the Himalayas in northern Pakistan, in the Punjab province, and where I lived as a child. My parents worked at a school, so I don't know if you know Pakistan at all, but the capital city is Islamabad. You do, fantastic. Capital city is Islamabad. Jump in the car, go up the mountains into what they call the foothills, only 7,500 feet, foothills. You get to a town called Murray. I don't know if you know it. You know Murray?
In there.
Yeah. Carry on down the road, you get to Jukka Gully.
Okay.
Yeah. Keep going and you get to another little place called Gurial. And at Gurial is a school, and that is the school where my parents went to work in 1981, and my brother and I were enrolled as pupils there. And it was great, absolutely fantastic. But there was a day there, one evening, that completely changed everything for me. And that was the evening when the maths teacher was doing a computer programming class for the adults, not for the pupils, for the adults, right? And I kind of was padding around school. Actually, it was a boarding school. Actually, lived on site, and I came in and I kind of found the room where they were doing this. And and there was a door that went into this room with a big glass window in it. Now I was only little. I'm not much taller now, but at the time I was about that tall. And I poked my head through this window, and I could see these adults lined up learning about computers, and they had 2 ZX81s. And 2 Apple II computers in this room, and they were learning how to program in BASIC.
to his credit, the maths teacher, who was a Scottish guy by the name of Mr. Murray, came out of the room, saw that I was interested, and handed me the programming manual for the ZX81. I was only 9, right? But he handed me the programming manual for a ZX81. And I looked at this, and in those days, of course, the manuals that came with computers weren't like the manuals that come with computers today, which are just like a load of pathetic little leaflets that don't tell you anything. They actually came as big spiral-bound books, and in it had how to program it, it had how it was built, how everything you needed to know to start getting stuff done on these computers. It was a fantastic time of computing, and actually this computer drove the whole of that 1980s home computing revolution that happened. And the UK still benefits from that today. The programmers that came up through there are now, there's a lot of them in the games industry, and so that's why the UK really leads the way. So that was my first introduction. I started writing programs. Couldn't get on the computers, of course. I was too young, but I could write them on paper. I suspect they didn't work. I have no idea. But I was hooked at that point. My parents then came back to the UK in 1984 for a brief time, and I was packed off to a boarding school, and they went back out to Pakistan again. And the school I went to, I was exploring school, discovered they had a computer room, absolutely full. By this time it was BBC microcomputers, which were a bit bigger, a bit more powerful. And so I used to spend all of my free time up there learning how to program. And now, this was the time when I actually really started to learn how computers worked. And of course, computers in the 80s, you were much closer to the metal, as we say. You had to really understand how a computer worked to get anything out of it. So that was how I kind of, cut my teeth on this stuff and started to learn this stuff. Went through school, went to university, didn't do a computing degree, did a biology degree. But as soon as I left university, I went straight into software engineering. I worked for Logica, worked in their space and defense division, and built software for that, for them. And then in 2005, I left Logica and went to work for Siemens. Initially as a senior software engineer, worked my way up and ended up as a systems architect, and I ran the managed software development on their pool site. And we worked in smart cities and transportation mainly. Yeah? So things like we're in Manchester, so I can say this safely. Things like London congestion charging. That was a project that my team actually built. My baby at the time was a system called Stratos. At the time, this was now getting to say 2011, 2012 time, and the cloud was huge. So one of the things I did was actually go out and start pitching the cloud to Siemens and saying, this is what you need to be doing. And that all came actually from I'd been to visit a friend of mine who lived in London. He'd become CTO of a startup there. They were doing the voting systems for things like Britain's Got Talent and The Voice, these sorts of things. Now you've got your phone, and you can actually vote on your phone, and there's this app that goes with it. And they were running all their back end in the cloud. And I remember sitting there, we were sat on his couch on Saturday evening watching X Factor or whatever it was. Sort of kids running around, dog on the sofa, all these sorts of things. And he sat there with his laptop. And he's managing all this back end stuff. And you can watch all these people voting on the show in real time as it's coming through. At the end of the show, he kind of closed most of it down, left 1 or 2 computers running, because people still vote, like ages after the lines are closed, people still vote. They don't expect their app to crash. So, and I asked him, I said, so how much did having all that, you've just done infrastructure for about 1 million votes. How much did it cost you to put that infrastructure together? And he went, oh, $4. And I was like, you can't be serious. So this was like, okay, no, cloud. So I went back to Siemens, told them, no, you need to be doing this stuff in the cloud now, and explained why. And years later, I was actually at Siemens on Wednesday, and they told me that the system that we then went and developed now has 12,000 devices connected to it. It runs traffic control systems across the whole country. It has 12,000 devices connected to it. They can now host devices for about $1 a day, which was just something they could never have done before. So, and in last month they added 3,000 new devices. That's controllers managing junctions, car park signs, all this kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool. So that was my first kind of taste of what it takes to actually get something done. A huge amount of work. I left Siemens in 2013 and started my own business, which eventually turned into Visioneer. And originally we designed and built motorsport sensors. We had a little bit of success doing that, but we kind of got to a stage where we were looking at the risk versus revenue and deciding that actually motorsport wasn't really the thing to be getting into, because it's actually quite a small market, and because of the amount of sponsorship money that's involved and that kind of thing, you have to carry a lot of insurances and things. It just wasn't worth it. So we stopped doing that. I kind of respun the business as a consultancy, and then that all changed last September. Every year, Roger Hamilton does a big event in London called Fast Forward. Last year it's called Fast Forward Business. This year he's changed the name to now Fast Forward Summit. And as part of that, he started going through the technology waves that were going to, because he's a bit of a futurist and he's into technology. So he started going through the big waves that he felt that entrepreneurs needed to be aware of in their businesses. One of those waves was the virtual reality, augmented reality wave. And I looked at this slide, and years ago I'd been playing games like Elite, and I was really into the 3D stuff. I understood the maths of it. I knew how you do that kind of thing. And it was fascinating to me that finally we'd got to a stage where the technology could actually give you a really interesting experience. So after that event, I did a bit of research. He specifically spoke about the Microsoft HoloLens, which is this device here. Very new at the time. It hadn't even been released in the UK. It was only available in the United States and Canada. And I looked at that and I thought, I could do that. That's something that's really interesting. I could actually do that. So I went out, I downloaded all the software development kits and stuff, everything that was available, and started actually just generating really simple stuff and actually started to get it happening. So at the same time, I met a guy who, at that event on the last day, a chap called Anthony Chadwick from Liverpool, who has a company called Webinar Bet. And he has online webinars where he trains, vets have to do this certain amount of online CPD every year to stay qualified. It's sort of a bit like airline pilots, I guess. And he has a business that actually provides that training online. And he was super interested in the HoloLens and actually seeing what could be done in augmented reality to actually make that training more effective. But he didn't have a development partner. So I went and connected up with him and said, you tell me what you need and I'll go away and make it. So I did that, and I built him the first 2 or 3 apps for HoloLens that he then used to go and raise investment. And with that investment money, he founded HoloVet, which is a new business. And they have just been valued, I think, some of it's a couple of million, something like that. So off the back of that, he was able then to, there was enough there, there's enough of a demonstrator there that he could actually go out and create a new business. At the same time, I partnered up with a chap called Chandresh Parla, who is also part of the Entrepreneurs Institute community. And I first met him at the Fast Forward Summit. Then later in November, I'd gone to Bali to a Entrepreneurs Accelerator program. And he was one of the mentors there, so we kind of hooked up. And Roger was there as well. And we'd spoken about how do you create an augmented business, reality business, how you do these things. On the way back, I was sat at the Bali airport, and my phone was, got internet. My phone messages start coming in, and one of them was from Chandresh saying, I really want to be involved in your business. Couldn't really say anything while we were on the course because it would have been a bit inappropriate, but now we're done, I really want to be involved. It's like, yeah, okay, this sounds like a great idea. So together we started building just apps. This was taken at Context at the Olympia. Chandresh has got he's got lots of businesses, but one of them is events and exhibitions technology business. And we wanted to see what opportunities there were for augmented reality in that space. So we just threw together this demonstrator. This is a screenshot from it taken at the Olympia. It kind of gave you a virtual exhibition space, and then what you could do is you could actually So you give me this in full size, and you can actually walk around it, and we can try that later if you want. I've got all this stuff here. We can try that.
We try the ZX as well.
Yeah, I'm the same one. That's in black and white, really jerky. Yeah. So we can do this, and I can show you the stuff that we did for Anthony Chadwick as well. That then eventually turned into Yugo World. So this is our latest. So this is Chandra and I co-founded this business, and this is looking at virtual presence. This is talking about how do you experience the life of somebody else? How can you how can you actually hook up with someone who could be a completely different part of the world, and actually go and see what they can see and actually do what they with them as a guide, right? So it's like an online marketplace where you can hook up with someone who's somewhere else, and you can show you something. Okay, that's the basic concept. And then we're looking at different kind of verticals for that. So we're looking at things like virtual tourism, we're looking at property and all these sort of things as applications for that. And that all stems from the idea that if you really want to understand somebody, that saying, if you want to understand someone, you spend some time in their shoes. But this actually does that. And that's the idea. And because Chandra and I both really passionately believe that if you want the most innovative ideas, you want the best ideas, you need the most diverse group of people you can possibly find, bring them together, and the ideas will be so much better, the more diverse they are. And we've both seen this happen, in our part, and we know this is what happens. And these sorts of platforms we feel can actually really provide that as something that can happen. So what I thought would be quite interesting before we go any further is actually to look at some of the terminology that throw around ideas, terminology like virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality. I think most people have probably heard of virtual reality, right? You all know what virtual reality is. How many people have come across augmented reality? No, augmented reality is right. Okay, so quite a few. Okay, so there's a load of different ways of actually defining this stuff. Some people will talk about mixed reality as a continuum with virtual reality at one end and reality, I guess, digital at the other end, and augmented reality in the middle. But I came across this slide, and I thought this one was actually a lot more useful because it helps to define actually what the capabilities of the equipment is. I'm just going to hop down and do this because. Sorry?
There's a pointer on there.
Oh, is there? Oh, okay, that's all right. There. Okay, so virtual reality, we all know, is where the surround, everything within it is in the experience is digitally created, right? So everything. Augmented reality overlays digital content into the real world. But then we also have devices like the HoloLens, which can take it a step further. And what the HoloLens actually is able to do is it understands what's in the world. It has a capacity to figure out that something's in front of something else, for example, which means that the digital content actually blends in with it. So if you look at the difference between these two, you can see in the augmented reality, you've got some digital content just overlaid. But here, the digital content is actually behind the couch, and the couch is in the real world, right? So that's actually a really hard problem to solve, and Microsoft has solved it to a point. So you can actually mix up. So you can have digital content, for example, that would knows where things are in the room. There's a game I was talking to someone about this earlier. It's one of the demo games that comes with HoloLens, which is like a murder mystery, and the characters from the murder mystery will actually sit on your furniture, which I think is incredibly clever. So that's kind of like mixed reality for me. I think is a better way of describing it. That said, for any software engineers in the room, probably maybe a few. No, okay. Software people will get into almost religious arguments about the smallest of things. So it's going to get heated at some stage, I'm sure. So this is the kit that's kind of out there at the moment for virtual reality. So this is your Vives, your Oculuses, and your PlayStation VRs. This has been around for quite a while now, and that's everywhere. There's a ton of stuff for that. There's games and applications for that all over the place. So we've all seen that. This is the new stuff, some of the new stuff. So this is the Windows 10 holographic thing. So it started with HoloLens. So there's a HoloLens there. But HoloLens, what they've done is they've released the Windows 10 holographic edition to other hardware manufacturers as well. So people like Acer, HP have built headsets that are actually running Windows 10 holographic. So Windows 10, the operating system on the HoloLens is like a mobile operating system. It doesn't need to be tethered. These are some of the newer stuff. So this is where augmented reality starts to become a little bit more interesting, because these are designed for outdoor use amongst other things. HoloLens isn't. But these are Android devices. And the way they work is quite interesting, because you know how you can get like an iWatch or an Android watch, and it becomes almost like a second screen controller for your phone? That's basically what these are. Which means that it's you can create apps and things like that very quickly, and deliver them on the app stores and all these sorts of things. And so these are companies like ODG are doing this, and they're great for things like warehouse picking systems, for example, training applications, that kind of stuff. So this is the Gartner hype cycle, so we can see where this stuff is. This is actually 2016, so it's a little bit out of date. But we've got virtual reality sort of coming up the slope of enlightenment here. So there are good, solid businesses now coming through that are doing virtual reality. It's kind of been through this whole sort of trough of disillusionment stuff, We all know, everyone knows about the Gartner hype cycle, right? No. Okay, so Gartner, every year they release this graph here with the technology spread across it. And what it does is it works on the assumption that all technology kind of follows this kind of adoption curve. You get an innovation point where the new technology is coming through. The people involved with it hype it. And then something happens. So think Google Glass, for example. Something happens, and then suddenly the industry kind of says, "Now, done with it. This is," and it all plunges like this. The businesses, a lot of the businesses up here will now, the businesses aren't that sustainable, will disappear, and the technology will kind of plummet into this what we call trough of disillusionment. At that point there, the people who've got a really strong business models, the people who really understand this stuff, will then start to build more sustainable businesses, and then you get a better growth. And so entrepreneurs generally, I guess, we're kind of trying to pick stuff up here, aren't we? We want stuff that's kind of gone through the trough, and something that we can actually create good good business models out of. So we've got virtual reality has kind of come out of this trough now, and is starting to come up. Augmented reality in 2016 was here. I'd say now it's probably coming up too. And then down here we've got even, got the crazy stuff. We've got things like brain thought control stuff, 4D printing, human augmentation, quantum computing, all these sorts of things that still kind of work. So they're very, very early technologies now. They're kind of working their way up there. This is the projected growth, sort of revenue forecast of augmented virtual reality. So you can see that the growth that's expected is massive. It reaches nearly 150 billion globally by 2020. So there's a lot to be done there. We're here at the moment. The other thing that's quite interesting about this, though, other than the overall numbers, is the way augmented and virtual reality are proportioned across that. In 2016, it was mostly virtual reality. We've all heard of virtual reality, augmented reality, not so much. 2017 is about half and half now. But going forward, so augmented reality actually overtakes virtual reality as the dominant technology. And by the time you get to 2020, it's almost all about augmented reality, because of what it can offer, right? The fact that you can overlay stuff into the real world actually makes it a lot more useful. So some of the applications that people are doing, this is a HoloLens application, and this is Case Western University. What they've done is they're looking at medical imaging and how you can make that three-dimensional, and then use it as a training aid. So that's what this is all about. The other thing that you can see going on here is you've got 4 or 5 people here all looking at the same experience. So they're all actually looking at the same, you know, they all see that skeleton in the same place in the room. And whoever's driving that.
Physically in the same place.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a way of synchronizing a whole bunch of HoloLenses together so that people get the same experience. And that's one of the things we did actually for Anthony.
And you can still look through the lens and see the other people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you see the skeleton from different angles?
Yeah, you can walk around it. Yeah. I'll show you later. You'll see. You'll see. It's absolutely, it's incredible. It really is. So that's quite interesting. So training is a huge potential industry for this technology. Moving on here. So this is actually done with Oculus, but I've seen similar things done with HoloLens. It's a much more interesting, and this is where you can see why augmented reality is more interesting than virtual reality, right? Because in augmented reality, they would be able to see that dummy, but the dummy would then be decorated with all this extra information. So they're using it as a prop in this case, but in the HoloLens version, what happens is the HoloLens recognizes that this is a CPR dummy, and it will actually give them guidance and training as they go through and do it. So that's really interesting, because that is proper AR, that is now, because we're taking a real world object and augmenting it with extra information that actually adds value. Here we've got that's a HoloLens being used in a factory, obviously, and that is actually guiding a worker through the process of assembling a car. There's some great applications here that have got some real business benefits, because what you can do here is you can actually say, I'm trying to think of a concrete example. Say you've got you're trying to expand an operation overseas, and all your subject matter experts are in a country that you're already in, right? How are you going to train people to actually go out there, train that workforce without, you know, you'd have to fly them over there, and while they're doing that, you now can't be expanding in another country because all your training teams over here. So you've hit this limit of what you can actually have with people scaling business. Well, one of the great business models here is you say, well, you take that subject matter expert team, you centralize it into a central call center, and then what you can do is they can actually see through the eyes of this operator here, and they can actually decorate what that operator can see in 3 dimensions. So they can actually say, you know, this operator says, I don't know what to do here. They can actually say, well, take that widget and plug it in there and do this and and actually guide them through that. And then 10 minutes later, they can be talking to someone on a different continent and taking them through the same process. So there's some really powerful applications there, I think. This is something that's relatively new. I put this slide in today on the train because I was talking to someone over the last couple of days who's interested in doing something like this. What's happening here is this is a virtual reality experience, but it's using props in the real world. And what's happening is the virtual reality technology is seeing these props and tracking them and understanding where they are, where they're pointing, and all these sorts of things. And then it's overlaying the experience on top of that. So that's something they're calling, some people are calling it hyper reality, but for me, hyper reality is something else. But that's what they're talking about when they're talking about doing these sorts of things. So these, you know, really useful for exhibitions, play spaces, that kind of stuff. So people setting up, for example, space like this, filling it with a bunch of sort of VR experiences or AR experiences, and then actually having people come through the door and actually having those experiences. And that's becoming more and more sophisticated. You know, it can, you know, you pick something up in the real world, you actually see it in the virtual world. There'll be a virtual world representation of it. So that's quite interesting. This is holoportation. This is a bit of a mock-up. They haven't quite got this far with it on HoloLens. But the idea is in augmented reality again. Imagine we had people actually here sitting in the chairs and in the room here. We had people that had holoported in from anywhere in the world. You know, and you could talk, still network them, right? You can talk to them out back there, you know, as if they're real people. You look them in the eye and you have to talk to them. That's cool. There's a long way to go to actually make that really, really work. You know, I've seen some very rudimentary attempts at it so far, but it is happening. Facebook have released their virtual spaces now, where people can actually link up in virtual reality in a space, virtual space, and interact. Again, that's pretty basic. It's much more interesting when you do it in augmented reality or mixed reality, where you know you've actually got real world stuff there as well. It's not all digital.
People the people who are there holographically, they move around with the
Yeah. Yeah, they can actually move around in that space. So what happens is you assign an area, and then that area basically exists in 2 locations. And then what you can do then is you can understand where people are in that area, then put them there. So still some big problems to solve, because actually the HoloLens can't, so he's looking that way. There's nothing on the HoloLens there, looking down to see where his feet are and anything like that, right? So there's problems to solve there. You need other kit at the moment. But they'll get there. There's actually there's a Microsoft research team at the moment looking into this, and they have done demos at trade shows. Although my understanding is they're a bit contrived at the moment. This is one of ours. So this is the first project we did for Webinar Vet. And what we did was we took 3D models of dogs and skeletons and vasculature, and even a beating heart as well. And then we put together a very simple model where users could actually take it all apart. They can look at the bones, they can wander around, have a look at different angles, and it's designed to become a training aid. And you can have a look at that one later as well if you want. Yugo World. So yeah, if anyone is interested in getting involved in Yugo World, which is the virtual presence thing I talked about earlier, we have a beta, however you want to pronounce it, waiting list online. So if you want to go on there and sign up, it'd be awesome to have you. And this is me. So I'm kind of at the end really. Please connect with me if you're interested in it. I've got cards as well, and I would love to connect with you. And basically, my brain is yours for the rest of the day. So,
Give a round of applause, everyone. I just want to, we're going to have some questions and answers. Before we do that, I just want you to break for 2 or 3 minutes, just in your little tables, in 3s and 4s and 5s. Just share with yourselves what you've learned. We've gone through Jon's journey, we've gone through the different businesses and how VR and AR is impacting. And just come up with a couple of questions amongst the table and just try and pick the best one. And then we'll have a couple of questions and answers in a couple of minutes. Thanks very much. Last 30 seconds, guys. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and finish. Thanks very much. Yeah, I hope you thoroughly enjoyed yourselves.
That'll be a bit more challenging.
I hope you thoroughly enjoyed yourselves. Certainly fascinating for myself. I'll kick off the first question and then we'll come to around the different tables. What I was interested to know, Jon, was how you went from identifying the AR and the VR and obviously looking at going, there's something really in this. This is going to impact the future where I want to go. And getting to Yugo World and where you're at, how did you identify potentially the markets? You must have had different iterations of what to do.
Yeah.
And just a quick recap on how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really very exciting. I mean, it was, we started with that first slide that I showed with the exhibition hall, for example. And what it was going out and talking to people, getting into those places, and then just seeing what kind of traction we got from the ideas. Those first few things, go out there, there'd be nothing. Go out there, nothing. Go out there. We knew there was something. We knew that AR/VR was big, but it's just like, where's the business in this, And it was the thing that really triggered Yugo World was when we went out there and said, hey, if something like this existed, who'd be interested? And everyone, and it's like, okay, now we've got something, So now it's a case of sort of following. Those processes outlined in the lean startup, those kind of experimental processes now, and actually trying to really kind of hone in on that bit of value. And then once we've got the value sorted, then it will be a time to then, okay, now how's the growth model going to work? Given that that's now the business model, how do we now scale that out? And that's kind of the process that we're kind of working through now.
Cool. Thank you very much. Do we have our first question for any of you guys?
Yeah. I was interested. I've got a software platform in the events industry, and I'm still trying to fathom how to get a lot of the old schools from pen to paper to actually to digital. That's how far behind.
Yeah.
You've got the likes of Eventbrite, you've got the likes of Ticketmaster. I'm there, but 15 years behind them.
Yeah.
How I can see this, and I've used, as you put, as Oculus Rift, and
yeah.
very expensive.
Yes.
And I think the price point, I mean, I can certainly see the application for food and drink producers and the exhibitions, and putting them in touch with exhibitors. I can see this.
Yeah.
It's getting them to be able to afford to be able to do it, and the mindset change needed to do that. how did you overcome that with products that you actually brought onto the market?
In terms of the exhibition stuff, I would say that's still a journey we're on, because you're absolutely right. We hit the same sorts of things. You know, the people who organise the exhibitions actually don't have a huge amount of money. You know, they really don't. You think they do because they hire these enormous venues, but they really don't. But we were kind of looking at use cases like floor planning. We were trying to avoid the whole. Mostly, if you see VR now in exhibition, it's kind of like a bit of a novelty thing, isn't it? It's like, come here. Oh yeah, we'll get people into your stand. Just, you know, have a look at the deck of a pirate ship or something. Well, yeah, okay. Gets people on the stand. Does it get them to buy anything? No. But yeah, so we were looking at things like in floor planning. So say you were trying to sell space, or you were trying to sell your venue if you're a venue owner, and you wanted people to be able to, like, exhibition organisers, to be able to actually visualise that space. So these are the sorts of things that we were looking at. Yeah, I don't know if that helps. Yeah, sure.
We've got time for sharing afterwards as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions from over this side?
So I would have a question on the applications, or one of the examples around training side of things. I know we have talked about the exhibitions. So what do you think will be the biggest applications, and whether, other than training and those areas?
That's a very good question. The thing is, I actually think that I have a bit of a passion for education anyway, so I'm kind of education biased. I think that it's kind of heading into kind of a social impact thing, isn't it? I think maybe it's kind of okay. Where to start? So 3D printing. Okay, this actually happened, and it's quite a well-known story. International Space Station trying to fix a gadget on the International Space Station in space, and they needed a tool which they didn't have. So they radio down to ground control and they say, we need this tool. Or I don't even think they did that. I think ground control overheard them saying, if only we had a widget adjusting spanner size blah, we don't have it. So what do ground control do? Do they send it up in the next Soyuz capsule, which costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more, right? So what they do, what they actually did was they said, well, the International Space Station has got a 3D printer and email. So if we make a model of the tool they need, and we email them this model, they can actually print out the tool, and now they've got the tool. Then you start thinking about, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that emails, right, you can actually export stuff that way? You know, if I want to make something, a 3D model of something, and all I have to do is email it to someone in another country, does that mean emails have to go through customs? Right. Now, you start to wonder, it's like, well, hang on, a whole load of stuff now suddenly breaks down. Right? We're all geographically constrained at the moment because we can only be in a place at any one time. Extrapolate that now onto things like teleportation and virtual presence, right? Where you can actually be anywhere, interacting with anyone else. Do you need a passport to do that? Do you need a visa? You know, it's like, and then you start to think, well, hang on, there's all these structures now, right? Do they actually even mean anything when all of this technology exists? So much stuff kind of breaks down, and I think it's almost like it's impossible really to say what effect that's going to have in the long term. But one of the things I do think is exciting about that, though, and it kind of links back to education, as someone about earlier, is imagine at the moment societies exist. We're all here because we could all get here, you know, and we've all got a common interest in entrepreneurship, and that's why we all came here. But imagine if geography wasn't the boundary anymore. You know, you imagine what does societies actually look like when that happens? Where you know, you have an interest in something, and anyone from anywhere in the world can join you and be part of your social group, be part of your you know, of your society now. Where's geography in that equation? It's all about now. It's all about the knowledge. It's all about the thing, the thing that interests you. You know, and for me, that is so exciting. Imagine education imagine having some topic that people want to know about, and it's visualized in 3D. It's linked together where, you know, this is linked to that. It's kind of like neurons are linked in your brain, you know, and you can explore that. And the only thing that group of people have in common is that they're all interested in that one thing. They all want to get together and explore it together. I think that's incredible. You know, what impact does that have on society? I have no idea. But I think society is just fundamentally different at that point. And so I've kind of gone off track, haven't I? But that's kind of what excites me. That's what excites me.
Follow-up question from she asked. The graph showed about the trajectory of the market.
Yeah.
Is that based on hardware or content?
That is
So
all
how
of
do you
it.
market?
That's total market, yeah. So software, hardware, the whole lot. Yeah.
And your specialty, like this at the beginning. So your specialism is in creating content, or?
We're creating content, yes. Yeah, we don't create hardware. That's something we'll let the Microsofts and the Googles and the Apples do.
Because I was going to say potentially that graph is actually underestimated.
It could be. Yeah. And who knows what supporting stuff comes off the back of that. So, you know, it's incredible.
I mean, well, my probably example interested in multiple times, but there's a lot of VR already.
Yeah. Red Bull,
Yeah.
they did that big demo, didn't they? Where they actually had that Halenko, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, they had a small groups of people, and they had a Formula One car, I think it was, in a exhibition stand.
Yeah.
All driven through, I think it's through an iPad or something. They drove a presentation to the VIPs, the exhibition thing there, and that was fascinating. I thought that was really interesting.
But again, that's her point about the cost.
Yeah.
It's all well and good, but you need to get the cost down.
Yeah, but the cost today, I give it. When you look at PCs over the last 5 years, everything phones, and I just think it'll drive down in no time.
Yeah,
do you know if there's quartz crystal used to make the defenders, because that's rocketing up in price?
I don't know.
Okay, interesting.
Are these machine quartz or natural quartz? I use a lot of crystals.
Yeah, I just know that that's going to become, if not already, one of the big expensive commodities that's rising. It'd be interesting if they don't use quartz crystal. I mean, they've got chips in, so I imagine they do. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say the clocks are usually made out of quartz, aren't they? But they're only. I don't know about the quartz side of it.
It's a software answer. I don't deal with the hardware.
I do play with hardware occasionally. One of the things I do is design audio compressors as well. But I don't know. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Anyone, Christina?
Yeah, just to follow on what that lady was saying, I was watching a really fascinating TED talk the other day, and they were talking about the impact on consciousness in a way, the virtual reality, the augmented reality, and they were saying about how it's actually proven to increase empathy because of that very reason, because you're touching and stepping into somebody else's shoes, and it really could help to break down miscommunications and ignorance in regards to different cultures and actually start to kind of bridge that gap between different cultures, which goes really it's on the Manchester Entrepreneur Social Facebook page. It's a really good tool. Yeah, I just thought it was more of a point to.
That's awesome.
Are there any other?
Yes, so there's around the cost. I had another question.
Yeah.
In one of the slides, we saw those glasses that were connected to the mobile phones.
Yeah.
So I can see that's a big market in the future. At the moment, are those glasses on the market, or is that something to come?
They're on the market now. You can get Epson do them, IDG do them. I've got some links somewhere. If you want, drop me your email address and I'll send you some stuff.
How much do they cost?
At the moment, those particular ones between, I would say, £700 and up to £2,500. The Holland is £2,500.
And the Hugo, the website that you have, do you already have a platform where people can connect using those glasses at the moment?
Not at the moment. What we're doing at the moment is we are out raising investment cash, and we are in the process of hiring a team in India to actually go ahead and do that. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment.
I can see that being No, really, like
Thank you.
if people could just connect anywhere,
Yeah.
not for a specific purpose, but even just like for like mobile phones. That's how mobile
Well,
phones came in. It's the same concept, isn't it?
We're actually starting with mobile phones because we recognise this stuff's too expensive at the moment. It will come down in price, as I said, massively. But at the moment, we're just starting with mobile devices and just saying, do people actually, if you actually gave someone the option to connect with someone else and have them show you something, would they even do it? Would they pay for it? And that's the learning and research that we're doing at the moment.
And then the applications are endless.
Yeah.
If you just keep it free and the platform where people can connect, like Skype, for example, but the AR.
Yeah.
Just conscious of time. There's another question.
My question was, what do you think is the future of AI? Is it going to be, mobile apps, or are they going to be wearables? Because currently I think everything is going, massive companies are working on wearables.
Yes.
And this is the focus?
Yeah, that's definitely
How
the
are we going to
focus.
get into the consumer market, apart from the price?
Yeah, I think that give it 5-10 years maybe. Mobile phones as we know them today won't exist. It will be wearables. Everything will go into wearables. Yeah.
Let's see.
How long can you wear these glasses for at a time?
I've worn that for 5 or 6 hours when I was developing on it. They're actually pretty stable. They used to be not so long ago, and there are still some cheap devices that still do this. There's a bit of a lag in there that make you really quite ill. That one hasn't made me ill yet. It's actually very, very stable. People are now starting to understand what it is about these experiences that can make people ill, and they're designing that out of the hardware. So there's lots and lots of learning going on in that area.
And one last question just to wrap it up, which is about if you look at your YouGo world and where you move forward. I know you personally for the last year or so, as part of Roger's group. How do you see your company moving forward in the future? You touched earlier on about the impact you can have on education in general, whether it's HoloVet or something else. Where do you think you'll take the company linking in your passion with education and your knowledge and your ability with YouGo?
For me, I think it's about a kind of a connection thing. It's about I'm always interested in ways where people can. It's like I don't know how to explain it. Right. So if you really want to understand someone else's life, you have to go and meet them and see them live their life, right? And when that happens, there's like a connection, there's an understanding that happens, and I think it's a really good thing that has benefits all around. If there was ever a time in this world when people needed to understand each other better, it's now, right? So the technology exists. Why are we not doing this? Why are we not actually bringing people together like this? It's such an obvious thing to do. And, so anything that advances that for me will be something that I'm interested in, something I want to do. And whether it's YouGo World or whether it's the next thing that happens beyond it or that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to actually bring people together, get them to experience what it's actually like to be somebody else, live their lives, understand the way they are, and actually get to know them. And that way, hopefully, we start to see people open out rather than close down. We start to see society open out rather than close down. And for me, I don't know, maybe that's my background and traveling and all the rest of it that's done that to me. Maybe it's my mum and my mum another time. But this is what this I think it's got to be. It's what we've got to do. We've got to do this. It's an imperative that we have to do this.
Fantastic. Everyone give Mr. Jon Masters a round of applause.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's the end of our formalities for today. I want to very quickly say thank you to the Wonder Inn. If you haven't been here before, this place has all sorts of events, from business events to workshops, talks, everything. There's beautiful bar and beautiful food. There's food afterwards if you want it, served over in the bar, or you can get it from the bar anyway. We're here for the rest of the night if you want to stay. Big thank you to the ILD. Been part of the ILD for about 3 years now. It's definitely broadened my horizons, my connections, and allowed me to meet a whole host of people in the Northwest. What we do with Entrepreneurs Institute, we partner with the IRD, especially in the Northwest at the minute, and merge the two things together. So it allows us to bring a new energy and a different aspects into the IRD, and we can leverage off each other to create better value. Huge thank you to Entrepreneurs Institute as well. Without them, this event wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have the global community we're connecting with. And last but not least, Mr. Jon Masters. So one more time, thank you very much. Next month is Jo Formosa, international speaker on Ayurvedic health. She created Health Dynamics. Ayurvedic health is about 8,000 years old, one of the oldest forms of how we look at our bodies. Different body types and different bodies operate in different ways, and she uses that as a basis to feed your body to live optimally. It is on Thursday, the 7th of September. It's the first Thursday of every month is Manchester Entrepreneur Social. So if you can come down, please do. And that is a unicorn. So thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy your night, have some food, and share with us. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, this has got a camera in it.